you miss the days when most meetings were in person? For me, in person is always the best way to build trust and relationships. But in today's world, in-person meetings are getting fewer and further between. Welcome back to NeuroConversant Leadership, where we talk about effective communication, especially in the STEM workplace. I'm Jeremy Doran, and I'd love to help great engineers become great leaders. Today, we're going to talk about building trust and making connections when you can't be in the same room. Back in episode 64, Natalie Doyle Oldfield was on, and she talked about building trust, and there are three things that you can really do. One is smile. One is being interested in asking questions, and the third is making eye contact. And these are things that people are going to judge you on instantaneously. Before they've really stopped to think about it, they're going to notice these things, and it's going to either build trust or it's going to hurt the trust. And for me, there are three different situations. When I'm dealing with people I don't know, I don't do any of those things. I don't make eye contact. My resting face is very neutral, and I tend not to engage, so I'm not going to be asking questions. If something's particularly interesting, then I might, and sometimes I will do it just as practice. I actually talk to people on elevators just because it's such a fun, weird challenge that I like to do it. And when I was on vacation a while ago, I challenged myself to actually engage with people when I was just walking around the grounds. I would smile, and it was kind of shocking to me that when I made eye contact and I smiled, they would just about always smile back and wave. It turns out that being just a little bit engaging goes a long way. When there are people I don't know, I don't tend to do it, but every once in a while I do, and it's kind of fun when I do. In my regular interactions with people that I do know, again, I don't smile a lot. I'm not particularly expressive in my face, but I do ask questions, and I'm genuinely curious, so I ask questions pretty naturally, and I make eye contact about the normal amount. So it's much easier than it is with strangers where I try to avoid it. But then the third situation is on Zoom. There are some extra challenges with Zoom, but there are some advantages to actually being able to make connections. So let's talk about building trust and making connections on Zoom. Now, I said earlier smiling, but it's not just smiling, it's being expressive. And the thing that inspired this episode is that I was editing one of my own podcasts, and the person was saying something really meaningful and really personal, and I just looked totally blank. And when I was watching it, I'm like, boy, I look like I'm paying attention, but I don't look like I care at all. And it made me realize I need to work on, not just body language, because you lose the body language when you're in Zoom, but my facial expressions. And they will sometimes seem big to me. When I press my lips together, it usually means that I am upset about something. If my nostrils flare, I'm showing you if you're watching this online, it generally means that I'm very interested or excited. If I do both, if I press my lips together and flare my nostrils, it generally means that I'm angry. And I actually will tell people this. I'm like, here's how to read me. But even though it seems big to me, it doesn't look big to other people. I took a presentation class when I was in college, and she kept trying to get me to be bigger in my hand gestures and my smile or whatever the facial expression is. And she finally got to smile or look like you could. So it just has to be a very small upturn of the side of the lips. And it looks like you could smile, or you might be smiling, and that's really good enough. It's when you look like you're not interested or not happy that can turn people off. So smile or look like you could was advice that I got and I like. When I'm on Zoom, there are a few things that I try to do. I need to do more of. But I will keep looking back at myself and see what I'm doing. If I'm making any sort of facial expression at all, I try to sit on a chair that's got no back, and I try to keep my hands off the desk. My natural tendency is to just rest my forearms on the desk, and then I'm not going to make any hand gestures at all. If I sit back and I have my hands off the desk, I'm more likely to use them. I'll also watch other people and see what their reactions are to what was said, and it will remind me. I'm not going to mimic them if I don't agree with what their facial expression said. But one important thing is that your feelings shouldn't be a secret. I have to try to proactively send messages with my face. So I will try to nod more or smile more or show surprise. And I try to make it obvious as much as I can. The second one was being genuinely interested, aka asking questions. And again, I think that I show interest. If I tilt my head 10 degrees, I assume you know that it means that I'm curious and I have questions. But that's not always the case. And while asking questions comes naturally to me, I tend to talk slower and I tend not to jump in as fast as other people do. So when I'm in a group setting, I will actually often raise my hand and people will make fun of me. They're like, we're not in grade school anymore. I say, yeah, but I got next. And then when they're done talking, they will let me ask my question or say what I have to say. But on Zoom, that is perfectly normal. There's a raise my hand button on there. So that's one benefit of being remote, is that it's normal to raise your hand when you have a question. Or if you don't want to even raise your hand, you can just put a question in the chat. If someone's talking about something and you put a question or comment in the chat, it shows that you're interested and it achieves the same goal without actually having to ask a question or even raise your hand. Making eye contact is the third one. You've probably heard of the term Zoom fatigue, and one of the reasons why people get Zoom fatigue is that it feels like you're making nonstop eye contact. If you look away from the screen, it looks like you aren't paying attention, and eye contact is tiring if you do too much of it. What's interesting is you're, in fact, never, ever making two-way eye contact with someone on Zoom. If you're looking at their eyes on the screen, you're looking down from where the camera is. Or if there are multiple people, you may be looking to one side or the other, but you're not looking at, to them, what looks like looking them in the eye. So if you want them to feel like you are making eye contact, you need to look right into the camera. Now, one of the downsides of that is that you don't get to see what their expression is. The upside is that you get to feel like you're breaking eye contact. So it's a little bit of a break for you. And when you look down to see their expression, which you should do some of the time, that's breaking eye contact, and that's normal and natural. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone makes too much eye contact and they're really just staring you down? It gets awkward. So looking at the camera so that it looks like you're looking them in the eye, then looking at their face on the screen, which is breaking eye contact, feels natural, and you get to understand what they're doing. If you want to feel like you're having a break from eye contact, look anywhere at the screen or at the camera. For me, personally, I try to go a third, a third, a third. A third of the time looking at the camera so people feel like I'm looking them in the eye. A third of the time I'm watching them to see what they're doing, or other people in the room, again, to gauge their feedback and what they're doing. And then a third of the time I'm looking at myself because I want to see what my face looks like. Do I look like I'm bored? Do I look like I'm interested? Do I look like I'm mad? So I think for me, a third, a third, a third is about the right way to go. In general, forming deep connections and building trust is hard, and it can even be more difficult on Zoom, but there are some advantages, so be sure to use them for all they're worth. Thanks again for listening to another episode of NeuroConversant Leadership. I really appreciate you being here, and I always want your feedback. So if you get a chance, can you either rate this episode or reach out to me on LinkedIn or an email at jdoran@neuroconversantleadership.com. Thanks once again. I look forward to talking to you again next week.